So we've seen your comments. We know you guys want to know what's going on with the Audi. How are we going with the Lemon to Lambo challenge? The Audi's decided to throw every curveball it possibly can at us. And in this episode, we're going to go through what it's done and where we're at.
So a couple of weeks ago, we purchased the Audi A5 at the auctions, brought it home. It didn't really have anything to fix on it besides there was a little seat trim bit and then the push start button. So we fixed them and we're thinking, great, ready to get, sold, but
Had a buyer lined up.
had a buyer lined up, roadworthy passed.
Yep, everything was sweet. And then we decided to do a review on it.
Yeah. On the hottest day.
On the hottest day that Brisbane's had probably all year.
Yep.
And yeah, it decided to break.
Yeah.
So what exactly happened? We were on our way home, sitting at a set of lights, then all of a sudden, kaput.
Shut off.
It didn't shut off.
Didn't it?
It's stumbling, misfiring, just going like crazy. We then, thankfully we're at the front of the light and we were able to just slowly take off and then pull down the next side street, which happened to be right beside an Autobarn. If you're in Australia, you know, like, oh, sweet, auto parts store. We broke down next to an auto parts store, which I think would be good. And I was thinking spark plug, coil pack, something like that. Morgan thought it was battery getting a bit low. Euros don't tend to like it.
It was quite low as well.
It was low. We were only able, so once we did pull off it to the side of the road, did your typical, just turn it off, turn it on again. And yeah, we got one of those and then the battery didn't have enough juice to start it again. We did plug in the scan tool. It had a misfire cylinder 3, shut down the cylinder, oh sorry, not cylinder 3, cylinder 5, shut down the cylinder and something to do with the intake valve not working properly. So,
not good.
pretty scary.
Yep.
We then packed it up on a trailer, took it home, and it's been here ever since. We're going to go through everything we did, diagnosing it, where we're at now. But yes, very scary, but hopefully we think we've got the solution.
Hopefully. So we got stranded on the side of the road. It was running like a bag of crap. We quickly chucked the scan tool on and it said it had a misfire in cylinder 5 and it was kind of quite easy to, you could hear it was just, down on the cylinder, just not running right. We also noticed it was chuffing out heaps of smoke, heaps of white smoke, and you could just smell it was really, really fuely. We're on the side of the road, it was super hot, so we're thinking we could try and diagnose it there, but it was unbelievably hot, so we quickly just chucked it on the trailer and took it home. And after more looking at it and starting it up, more issues, I guess, happened. It wasn't just cylinder 5 that then had the misfire, it was 4, 5, and 6. So whatever we did by just letting it run and figuring it out made it worse. That's about all the symptoms so far.
So we got the Audi home and like Morgan said, we had misfires in cylinders 4, 5, 6, stuck intake valve on cylinder 5, and basically the car was in a limp mode, trying to save itself and not to cause any damage. We started with the simplest thing first, which is the ignition source of the vehicle. So if you're new to cars, a vehicle needs 3 things to run. It needs air, fuel, and ignition. So in this case being petrol, we have petrol and the ignition source is a spark plug and coil pack. In a diesel, you've got diesel instead of petrol, and instead of a spark plug, you've got a glow plug. So we went to the easiest one first, which was the ignition source of the vehicle. It's very common, especially in European cars. I experienced it with my Porsche. In Australia's summers, it gets very, very hot. Engine temperatures get extremely hot, and the electronics do suffer. They don't have the best insulation. So for example, in my Porsche, extremely hot day. It was actually on one of the ramen runs in our earlier parts of YouTube, sitting at a set of lights and a coil let go, and my 6-cylinder was now running on 5. So when this happened, I thought immediately, hot day, temps are really high in the engine bay, most likely electrical, spark plug, coil pack, something like that. So that was our first point of call. We pulled the coil packs out. They looked to be okay. We did test the resistance on all the coil packs. They were fine. We then moved to the spark plugs. They looked a bit average. They definitely needed to be replaced. So we got a new set of spark plugs, chucked them in, see where we were at then. And it did run better, but it was still misfiring. But now, rather than being in cylinders 4, 5, and 6, we were now back to just cylinder 5. So we think what was happening is because the car went to a limp mode and there was a bit of overfueling, it fouled up the spark plugs in 4 and 6, and they weren't able to ignite properly, or so we thought. Then we were pretty much back to square one because the ignition source of things was now crossed out. We knew that the coils were sparking, or the coils were sending the spark to the spark plug, and the spark plug was igniting. So there's still something going on. So it can't be ignition, has to be either air or fuel. With these Audis, they do run quite an intricate intake manifold. So that's the thing on top here. Basically, there's 2 channels that pass over and into the intake port on the engine, and they have little flaps on it to open up the top channel into the bottom channel. I think it's that way. Yep. And basically, it's just to create a bit of velocity with the air going into the intake, make a bit more power, that kind of thing. Now, it is quite common for these flaps to break, to vacuum lines being cracked, and then that stops working. But it doesn't generally cause misfires. The car, because there's still always one channel of air open. So we didn't believe that it was the intake manifold. So the air side of things should be fine. But the last thing we got to check is the fuel. Now, when we were searching, doing research, your best bet is to go online. There are so many cars that have been made, so many people that have had experiences with their cars, problems with their cars, and forums, blog posts, they are your friend. So the entire time that we were searching, I and Morgan were looking on blog posts, forums, trying to see if anyone had the same symptoms as us. And not too many people had the same symptoms as us. They had either misfires or just poor performance, and that was either linked to bad ignition coils or, like I said, the valve problem. None of them had a fuel smell or anything like that, and none of the people had a misfire that then went from 1 cylinder to 3 cylinders in the same bank. And that was until I came across one forum post about a gentleman who explained all of his symptoms: overfueling, terrible fuel smell, white smoke, misfire in the cylinder, basically asking for help. And it turns out, from reading through the forum, he ended up taking his I think it was an A6 to the dealership, and it ended up being a stuck injector. And basically what was happening is the injector was stuck open and fuel was just blasting into the cylinder and not being able to stop, which was then depressurizing the fuel rail, not having as much pressure as was required for the other cylinders in that bank, cylinders 4 and 6, to basically put fuel in as well, which explains why we got the misfires in 4, 5, and 6. So basically that's where we're at today. We think that it's a bad and stuck open fuel injector, and that's what's creating the really bad fuel smell. It's overfueling cylinder 5, coating the spark plugs and getting them quite fouled up. So today we're going to pull the intake manifold off, we're going to pull the intake runners off, get access to the injectors. And what we're going to do, we haven't ordered a new injector yet for cylinder 5. All we're going to do is swap cylinders 4 and 5 injectors over, and then that way we'll button everything up, run the car, and see, does our misfire change from cylinder 5 to cylinder 4? If it does, well then, pretty safe to say that we've got a bad stuck open injector. And in that case, we'll just go get a new injector. We know exactly what's wrong. If it doesn't change, if it still has misfire cylinder 5, well, we're back to square one. But it might not be that the fuel system's completely good. It could be the fuel pressure regulator in that rail. It could be fuel pump. There's a lot of components to the fuel system. So but before we jump down that route, the next most likely cause is this fuel injector. So we'll tear into the engine and yeah, see if our misfire changes cylinder. Fingers crossed it does, because we really want this Audi gone. Alright, so we've swapped the injectors over. The injectors did look a little gunked up, so we did give them just a quick clean with some isopropyl alcohol and just a wipe down. We then switched cylinder 5's injector with cylinder 4 and vice versa. So we buttoned everything up, and this is the first start. So we'll see how she goes. Alright, we'll prime the fuel pump and go. Morgan says still fuely. It does seem like it's running okay, but we'll see once the idle switches down. So as you can see, we have filled our shed full of smoke. But we've got good news and we've got bad news. The good news is we have no misfires, nothing. It's all good. Codes are good, exception of the stuck intake tuning valve, which ironically, as I said at the start of the video, it can't possibly be the air intake. It is the air intake. So we're not misfiring anymore, which is good. I think what's happened is the air intake side of things, the valves have closed, which has forced it to run rich, or something along those lines. It's overfueled, clogged up the injectors with crud. And that's where we got our misfiring stuff. But the car was running and firing on all cylinders. It was fine. It was just chuffing a lot of smoke and was very, very rich. very, very big fuel smell. So yes, that's where we're at. So next step of the diagnosis is to jump into the entire intake tuning side of this Audi, which Morgan and I know nothing about at all. But it's good news that we don't have to buy a injector and all that, so that's good news. So that's really good. Make sure you check and test these things. Don't buy parts and just throw it at the car. Otherwise you end up spending money unnecessarily. Our injectors are fine on this car, they just need a little bit of a clean. So in the next episode of Lemon to Lambo, hopefully we have a resolution for you and we figured out why the intake tuning valve is not working. But until then, if you haven't already, hit that like button, comment below. If you have any idea on Audi or Volkswagen tuning valves and air intakes, let us know. Morgan and I certainly don't, so if you have any insight, that will be greatly appreciated. And most importantly, hit that subscribe button. It means a lot to us. And we'll see you in the next Project B and Lemon to Lambo video.